Good evening, JR.
What you say, Phil? Phil, you got a cold, don't you?
I've got a little crankiness of some kind.
It's old weather in Kentucky, buddy.
Yeah. Say, we got out of the, we're out of the worship
Right.
series and we're starting a new series. Tonight we're looking at the signs of glory, signs of His glory.
Yep.
We're pretty good at tooting our own horn. You can watch the news and watch Mr. Trump.
Yeah.
He can toot his horn pretty good. It's the self-centeredness of us, our human nature, that makes us do that. And you know, in this day and time, if you don't, a lot of people will look over you for promotions and
That's true.
look over you for raises and that type of thing. You know, but anything that brings glory to ourselves is really not good. We're flawed, sinful people. We all fade quickly when we're held beside Jesus, you know. That's,
You know, Phil, you're talking about workplace and all that. I had an uncle who told me one time about retiring. He said, if you think you can't be replaced when you retire, he said, stick your finger in a glass of water and pull it out and see how long it takes that hole to fill back up.
that's how long it takes to replace you.
That's exactly right. We get to thinking we can't be replaced and all that. Yes, we can. We sure can in a hurry.
End of the big game, we always see that the press will flock to that star player that maybe made big plays. And they ask him how it feels to win a big game. What do you think about your performance and all of that type of thing? And you know, some of them say, well, I want to give all the glory to God for this win. A writer study said if we're not careful, glorifying God can seem so routine to us that we just assume that we're doing it.
Yeah, but I don't know that I'm glad. I'm glad to see people do that, Phil, because there was years and years and years people wouldn't mention God at all.
I know.
They would never mention it, and
Well, the cameras wouldn't show John 3:16 in the end
exactly
zone,
right.
would they?
Exactly right.
Usually, you know, we tend to brag on God when everything's going good.
Well, that's true. That's true.
And when things don't go so well, we don't do that.
Right.
Today's scripture, we're looking at a miracle that happened at a wedding. Mm-hmm. We're going to be looking at different signs of Jesus
Right.
and His glory. And we start today with the wedding feast, happened in Cana. Mm-hmm. It's in the Gospel of John. And it talks about the place of the reeds where this was, this Cana or nest.
Right.
And we really don't know the exact location of this wedding. But they think it was about 8 miles north of Nazareth because there's reed beds along
Right.
the water and that type of thing. So it's a marshy plain.
Yeah.
And so that's what brings them to that conclusion. But we really don't know. But wherever it was, they had a strong Jewish population.
Yeah.
And therefore, the wedding ceremonies was Jewish. And archaeologists excavated some stone jars from that site. Now, the fact that, well, you'll get into that, them stone jars, that even they identified the wealth
Right.
of
Right.
this person, you know.
Right.
So if you had several little jars, you know,
Right.
it's different. But we'll look at the miracle there of Jesus at the wedding feast. One of the things, I guess the point of the whole lesson is, you know, Jesus works in our lives for His glory.
Right.
When Jesus went about this miracle, it was to bring attention to Himself.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about what was missing. It wasn't about what was made, and wasn't about the other people that were there.
Or the family, right?
Yeah.
Or the groom and the wedding. It was about Jesus.
Let's look at this scripture. It's
Yeah.
good.
We're looking at John chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. Now, to set the stage for this, Jesus had just taken his first steps in his ministry. John 1 talks about him picking his disciples, his apostles. Talks about him going down to and encountering John the Baptist at just north of the Dead Sea on the Jordan River, and John the Baptist baptizing him there. Then it talks about him going up into the wilderness, into the mountains there in that area, and being tempted for 40 days. And then he leaves to go back to Galilee. And of course, we know that Judea is what they call the southern part of Israel, and Galilee, that other northern area, is up around the Sea of Galilee itself. And so he's left to go up there, and so that's when the verses start today. It says, on the third day, a wedding took place in Cana of Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding as well. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother told him, "They don't have any wine." "What has this concern of yours to do with me, woman?" Jesus asked. "My hour has not yet come." So we kind of set the stage. The writer doesn't know, says we don't know whether that third day was the third day after he left Galilee to come up there. Left Judah to come up there, or it's the third day of the week, which is when weddings usually took place. We do know that Jewish weddings, and even Muslim weddings today and Jewish weddings today, are a long, strung out affair. They last a week.
Yeah.
There'll be one day associated with this, and then the wedding's not the first of the week. I think it probably comes later on, but they eat for a solid week and drink for a solid week. So that's what this was in the middle of. I like the way John did this. He first told about, he's like a great reporter. He said when, what, where, and who is what he answered here. The first one was it was the third day of the week, or third day of the wedding. What was happening? A wedding was taking place. Now, as I said, Jewish weddings take forever, and it's a privilege to be invited to a Jewish wedding or to a Muslim wedding or any wedding in that area. In fact, they would give you two invitations. They'd send one out early saying that it's going to take place this time. Then they would send out another invitation. Now, by sending out, they actually sent runners out, I guess, and said, "Food's ready.
Food's ready.
Let's eat.
Yeah.
Let's begin this big feast." Now, we do know that he went to Canaan. Cana is, I guess is the way we pronounce it, is up at the almost to the northern end of the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is like an upside down teardrop. It's small at the bottom and big at the top. And Cana's due west of that top part, that northern part, at the widest area, probably 4 or 5 miles. And then Nazareth is down at the southern tip of the Sea of Galilee, about 8 miles away. Of course, we know that Nazareth is where Jesus was raised when they came back from Egypt, and so I'm thinking, Phil. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. But anyway, Jesus and his disciples and Mary were all invited to this wedding. We don't know why. It appears to me that Mary might have known. It might have been some family members. We don't know, distant cousins or things like that.
She could have been helping with it.
She could have been helping with it, yeah. But she did have some authority. She did have some authority too, from what the servants did when she told them what to do. But anyway, okay, we got the setting for the wedding. We got Jesus being there, his mother being there, and the disciples. And like I said, it would have been very bad to turn down this invitation, so they were there. And she realizes in verse 3 that the wine's run out. Now, the writer talks about this, that the groom paid for the celebration, as today. And the groom's responsible for all the food and all the wine and things like that. The writer says that would be such a dishonor to run out of wine. And there was probably maybe hundreds of people there for a long period of time. And you didn't drink water all the time. You drank wine, is what you did for your meals and for your substance and so forth. And the writer seems to think that the bride's family might have even been within their rights to bring charges against the groom and the groom's family for running out of wine. First, for not holding up their end of the bargain, and second, for dishonoring their daughter, the groom, the bride. So it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And here now, Mary brings this up to Jesus. Mary says, they don't have any wine. And then in verse 4, we see Jesus' response to her. What has this concern of yours to do with me, woman? If I talk to my mother like that and you talk to your mother like that, we might get smacked, you know what? But the writer describes it as saying that wasn't a when he called her a woman, it wasn't a bad thing. It was more like ma'am. They don't have any wine. What is that concern of me, ma'am? Much like the way we would call our mother or ma'am. And in fact, John actually has Jesus addressing his mother like that twice in his book. The first one is here, where he says woman. And we know where the second was. The second was when he's hanging on the cross. Right. And he tells John, he tells his mother, behold your son, John. And so it was not a disrespectful thing that Jesus said to him, but it kind of it comes off to us like that a little bit.
Yeah.
And then he kind of puts the tapper on that by saying, my hour has not yet come. I think what Jesus meant was, it was not his time to reveal his full glory to the people. Now, let's talk about that a minute. It almost appears to me, Phil, like when Mary said that to Jesus, she, based on something or things that had occurred in his life, she knew he could solve the problem. Don't you think when she brought that up, it was almost like, I know you could help out with this situation.
Yeah.
Now, is it because he'd done things like this before, it's not recorded anywhere, or is it because Jesus was one of those people, which you've seen them in your life, that can quickly assess a situation and solve a problem?
Yeah.
But anyway, she believed that Jesus could take care of this problem. She didn't know how he was going to do it, obviously. But I'm sure that Jesus hadn't said, I'll get the wine, Mom, at the house, you know, and snap his finger and it show up. But she knew Jesus had the ability to do that. Now, maybe we know that when Mary first had Jesus, she was told us he was going to be the Son of God, and when they went to the temple and saw him with the priest in the temple, it said maybe a couple of times that she pondered these things in her mind. I'm not sure that Mary didn't think, maybe it's time. Maybe God had stressed to her, it's time for Jesus to come out. But anyway, she thought, I think, he could solve the problem. She didn't ask him how he was going to do it, anything like that. But I think she thought he might have the ability to do it somewhere or other. So we got the setting as the wedding. We got time, third day after he got back from Galilee, probably, or out from Judah. We see Jesus there, the disciples there, and Mary's there. And they've got an issue. They got a problem. They don't have any wine, and we're early on in this wedding probably, and we got a problem. And she addresses Jesus and say, they don't have any wine left. And he says, I can't do anything about it, essentially. So let's see what he says. The next verses tell us about the importance of doing what Jesus tells us to do. So what, does Jesus know what he's going to do right then? Is he?
Well, he prayed about it first.
Okay. I'm sure he did.
I think after Mary talked to him and he answered her the way he did, she was thinking, maybe I'm wrong.
maybe.
And then she just turned out, and you know, if we're wrong, we can say do whatever God tells you to do.
Yeah. Do you
That's
think?
more or less what she tells them.
Yeah. Do you think the servants see? There's another reason there. If you look at verse 5, which you're going to read, she talks directly to the servants right then. Do you think? I think she probably had something to do with the wedding, because the servants, I think, probably came to her and said, "We're about to run out of wine."
Well, she wouldn't have had servants otherwise.
Right. I think she had something to do. Either she was a real good friend of the family, just watching after things, or she had a part in it. But she knew who to go to.
Yeah.
And she tells them, as you're going to read in these next verses, what to do.
Let's read these verses. This is chapter 2, verse 5 through 8. Do whatever he tells you, his mother told the servants. Now 6 stone water jars had been set there for Jewish purification. Each contained 20 or 30 gallons. Fill the jars with water, Jesus told them. So they filled them to the brim. Then he said to them, now draw some out and take it to the head waiter. And they did. So, when she says do what he tells you, that's a command. That's not a request.
Right,
It's saying, if she held an official role at the wedding, she's using that authority right there.
And if she didn't have that authority, this is a Jewish woman. These servants wouldn't have paid any attention to her at all. Not at all.
But they did. They hopped to it.
Yeah.
If she didn't, they wouldn't have had any compulsion to obey her. But, they wouldn't have took an order from a woman.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the culture that they were in. But they would have only really been answerable to someone from the groom's family.
Right.
Or someone that the groom had hired to help out. So anyway, her statement's precursor to something that Jesus taught his disciples here. You're my friends if you do what I command you. So it's the same Greek word translated as whatever and what. So Mary fades from the singing after giving this instruction to the servants there. And there's reason for that. It wasn't about Mary.
Right.
The focus wasn't the wedding. It wasn't the crisis of running out of wine.
Right.
And it wasn't Mary. It was Jesus. So 6 stone water jars. We know that 7 is the perfect number. Well, 6 stone water jars means things weren't perfect.
A little bit short.
We're not perfect here. So it represented something that was imperfect. It could even be the fallenness of humanity, since the water was set out there for Jewish purification. Purification and cleansing was for sinful people. So that tells us something about the people that were there. Having 6 jars there, that size, was a display of wealth.
Yeah.
A 10-gallon water jar would have been common. But 20 to 30-gallon water jars, and to have 6 of them, that showed some affluence. You wouldn't need that much water for purification, even, if you set it out there to be purified for a week or whatever. I don't know what the time would be on that. But they were obviously a Jewish family. They were observant of the Jewish faith. The festival was a Jewish festival. And they were obedient to the Old Testament law. So these stone jars also were a notch above the clay jars that we see so often over in that area.
How long would it take to hew a 30-gallon
Wouldn't take me
hole
long.
into stone?
It'd take me a long time.
It'd take me a long time too. Yes, it would.
And, it's just a symbol, again, of the affluence.
Yeah, right.
That they were wealthy people. So, anyway, they were set there for Jewish purification. And water would be dipped out of the jars and poured over the hands, and even the head and things. It was just a practice in that time. The Jews had a Bible of sorts at that time called the Talmud. And its teachings would have been known and practiced in his life and even in the others that were there. And during his lifetime, it's got 30 chapters, this Talmud, on purifying things and cleansing things.
Yeah.
You think about that. It was important to him.
Yeah.
Especially various vessels and four chapters on cleaning one's hands.
Yeah.
So these were all things of the culture that were important to them. So filling those jars, they had 120 to 180 gallons of water turned to wine. Now that's a bunch of wine.
Yes, it is.
This day and time, that's a bunch of wine.
Yes.
It took a lot of trips to the spring to dip that water out and fill those jars to the brim like they did. Or if they had a cistern even that supplied the city's water.
Yeah.
There again, you got to haul it in there and fill them up. So it could have taken hours rather than a few minutes to do that. And he says, take it to the head waiter. Now, this is the person, I guess it's kind of like a taste tester.
Yeah.
Person probably in charge of the food and the drink, and whenever anything was to be brought out, another course, he would do the testing.
Make sure it's all right.
He'd do the testing, and he'd pronounce it as good, or we're not going to have this course. So he may have been working the wedding venue. We don't know. He could have been a master of ceremonies, chief steward.
Yeah.
We really don't know, but he was going to make sure everybody had plenty to eat and to drink. That was his main job.
Yeah.
And make sure that it was good stuff. So, as he did that, Mary's response here in all this shows the depth of her faith. She was Jesus' mother, carried him in her womb for 9 months. She'd seen him grow up, seen him in the temple as a boy.
Mm-hmm.
She had provided him sustenance all these years and provision. She knew that her son was the Savior.
Yeah.
He was her son, but he's also her Savior. So, in this moment, she took the rebuke that Jesus offered there when he says, what is this to do with me? She took that as coming from God. What does she do? She gives that sage advice. You do what he orders you to do. When we don't understand God's timing, we run into trouble, don't we?
Yeah, we get...
Our task is to do what he commands us to do. Theirs was to fill these empty water pots. I don't think any of them understood the process of wine making. They may have.
Well, they knew it wasn't going to happen that quick.
But no, I mean,
They knew that
it was
much.
impossible. But yet they obeyed, and then they were witnesses to the miracle.
Yeah.
Who was it? The servants. The servants. By being obedient, even when it didn't make sense. And that's the heart of true faith. They were obedient when it didn't make sense.
Yep.
And we'll talk about it more in your verses next. But we see Jesus' glory through what he does, but we also see who he uses.
Right.
In this case right here, it's the servants. So look at the next verses.
We look at 9 through 11 now. Now the servants have taken some of the water, as it was poured in there to be, to the head waiter. When the head waiter tasted the water, in parentheses, after it had become wine, he did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. He called the groom and told him, everyone sets out the fine wine first, then after people are drunk, the inferior. But you have kept the fine wine until now. Jesus did this, as John said, Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee. He revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. The head waiter probably didn't even know what was going on. He didn't know that there was a shortage of wine. He just thought that bringing him the next wine to be set out to taste it, make sure it was okay.
He had probably called for more wine.
He probably had.
And Mary
and they said, we don't.
Immediately went to Jesus.
Yeah.
Because she didn't have a fix for it.
So he didn't have a clue. So he wasn't involved in the miracle and knowing what the miracle was. But between the time the water was drawn and the head waiter tasted it, it became wine. And I don't care if it was an hour. It doesn't matter. You don't make wine in an hour. And not only did it become wine, it became very good wine. And the head waiter says, so he goes to the groom and said, this is great. He said, most of the time we serve the fine wine served first. And when you get everybody feeling good, then you start giving them that old poor stuff, that cheap stuff. Because they don't really care then.
The ripple.
Huh?
The ripple.
The ripple, that's right. And they're fine with it then. He said, you saved the best till last. Now, it talks about who knew. As you alluded to earlier, it says in verse 9 that he did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn it out, the water knew. The servants that were there knew exactly what had happened. They knew that they didn't have anything to do with it. Mary didn't have anything to do with it, but it was a man that told them what to do. It was Jesus who told them what to do, to take the water to the head waiter. Now I'm assuming, Phil, that the disciples were right there with Jesus too.
Yeah.
They witnessed all of this. And then John wraps it up by saying, Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee. He revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. John calls Jesus' miracles signs. The other gospel writers call them miracles. We think in terms of miracles rather than signs, but John called them signs. And this was the first sign that Jesus performed, first miracle that Jesus performed in his ministry. Did he take it because Mary asked him that God was saying to him, his father was saying to him, it's time?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't.
Well, I think you probably hit the nail on the head. It doesn't say that Jesus prayed, but we know that Jesus prayed throughout his life here, his ministry. He prayed to God almost constantly.
I don't think he thought it was his time to reveal his ministry. But
Okay.
it was time for him to reveal himself
Okay.
as to who he was
Okay.
to those disciples that had been following him.
Yeah.
Not only him, but the servants. And then
Right.
also to affirm to his mother.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the writer talks about that God revealed the truth here, much like he does today, and much like he's done throughout history. Who did God reveal the birth of Jesus to first? The shepherds out of the lowest of low people. Here he reveals it to the servants, and to Mary, of course, but to the servants. He didn't reveal it to the mass of people that were there, the hundreds of people, or 20s of people, whatever there was that was there. To the groom never knew, probably never knew anything was happening.
Yeah.
He didn't have a clue that it was about out of wine, where it came from. But he revealed it to, as the writer talks about, to the poor. He invites the poor, the blind, the beggars, the outcasts, the overlooked, and those are deemed low life by society to participate in his kingdom. That's who God goes to first. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't be affluent and be a Christian and God offer you his grace, because he does. But he takes it to people that, he really takes it to people that need it, are downtrodden, as we see throughout Jesus' ministry. That's who he ministered to more than anybody else. So we knew that the source of wine, we knew that Jesus knew, Mary knew, the servants knew, and the disciples knew. Now, the writer talks about it when it says he revealed his glory and his disciples believed in him. We may feel that in the Old Testament, God's glory was revealed or dwelled in the tabernacle, in the Holy of Holies of Time. We talked about that last week. And then later in the temple itself. But his glory wasn't shown around to everyone. Now we see that Jesus is revealed as the Father's Son, as the Son of God. Through this miracle he performed, that the only person that could have done that would have been a God. Yeah. And Jesus did it because he was the Son of God, living here on earth. And it talks about his disciples believing. Before this, they'd been asked by Jesus to follow them. He was going to make them fishers of men. They didn't have a clue, did they, at this point in time, what was happening?
I think that Peter and Andrew and John knew.
And James and John might have known
James
a little more than the others.
Yeah, they knew a little bit more than others. They immediately felt a drawing to him and felt that he was different.
They knew he was somebody special.
Yeah.
For sure.
But after this, they all believed, didn't they?
It says they believed in his divine power. They saw what happened, and they knew that whoever could do this had to be from God. And they were drawn closer to him, I would imagine. We know that they still doubted at times later on. They still questioned some of the things he was doing, and they really questioned why he kept telling them at the end why he had to die.
And why did he allow himself to get caught?
Yeah.
You know, he could avoid them. He had proven that he was evasive and that he could get away from them.
Yeah. And the point of this lesson is that Jesus' work in our lives is for his glory. It's not for us. It's not to build us up. It's not to build anybody else up. But it's for his glory. And this is the first of many miracles we're going to look at over the next several weeks. I think next week we're going to look at the second miracle he performed.
I think we can learn a lesson from this one, that you don't have to be affluent to be used by God. You don't have to be a rich person to be a witness for God, or a witness of his miracles. You know, it shows us here that how he uses those that are considered to be the least among us. So what do we do with this session today, Jay? I think we acknowledge God's glory each day of the week. You know, read a psalm that talks about God's glory. And just a few of them: 24, 57, 89, 96, 118, one of my favorites, 126, and then 139, which is my favorite song. and you know, if you study those psalms, you'll see different ways that God's glory is revealed. Pray for God's direction in your life. If there's something he wants you to do, maybe you got a stone jar he wants you to fill.
Yeah.
You know, I'm
or something he
you know,
wants you to take to
metaphor,
somebody.
but you know, maybe he's got something he wants you to take care of. Open yourself to that. Pray each morning for direction. Look to God to guide your paths. And he'll bring people to you. He'll do it.
Mhm.
Never fails. And then share what you know. Share the love of Christ that, to us and how highly he cares for us and loves us. Share that with somebody. Ask them to come to church with you. Yeah. This sign that happened at this wedding in Canaan, it wasn't, as Jay had said, it wasn't put the spotlight on the wine or the people that were there working or even those he revealed it to. It was to put Jesus in a different light.
Yeah.
The Messiah had come, and it was to bring that knowledge to that group of people. Glad you joined us today.
And I can just see Jesus telling the disciples, it doesn't say it here, but don't say anything about this. Just, you know, just keep us, you know, how he did it other
Yeah.
times when he
Uh-huh.
would heal someone, he said, don't tell anybody about it.
He kept saying, my hour hadn't come.
Yeah, yeah, our head cut.
We enjoyed bringing it to you. I hope you enjoyed the study. Join us next week. We'll open the scriptures again.